Hey, I'm Jesse. Let's have a devotion. We are seeing these clear parallels between Boaz in the book of Ruth as he pours out measures of barley, giving generously to Ruth, and these teachings within Jesus' ministry, particularly the Sermon on the Mount. In Luke chapter 6 rendition, we see, "Give and it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you." Let's talk about this. It has a precedent in another one of those Old Testament passages that can be just so difficult to explain. When I taught through Numbers and Deuteronomy previously, you can see those. I think the series is titled "Shadows in the Sand" on our YouTube channel. Um, when I taught through those, I saw more militant atheists come to Christ than any other series I'd ever taught, because they didn't understand these passages in context. There's the clear teaching in Deuteronomy chapter 25 from which we actually get the concept of levirate marriage. Actually, in Deuteronomy 25 verses 5 and 6, we have this really clear encapsulation of levirate marriage. All right, and we have some stipulations that are provided in verses 7 through 10. Like, if the guy backs out, that's the story of Onan, for example. Onan is like the polar opposite of Boaz. Boaz is the kinsman redeemer, the family redeemer, who actually rises up and redeems the bride. Onan, however, is the opposite of that. He refuses to fulfill his duties. Now, in verse 11 and 12, we have this weird story that seems to come out of nowhere that we've already covered. But then comes verse 13, and it has a direct line to this teaching that's in the Sermon on the Mount in Luke chapter 6. In Luke chapter 6, Jesus tells us, after giving us this depiction of Boaz's generosity to Ruth, shoveling 6 measures of barley into her shawl in Ruth chapter 3, that the measure we use will be measured back to us. Listen to this in Deuteronomy chapter 25, beginning in verse 13. This, by the way, is the NIV 84. I don't know if you guys have ever heard me use the NIV, particularly the older one. It's out of print now. "Do not have 2 differing weights in your bag, one heavy, one light. Do not have 2 differing measures in your house, one large, one small. You must have accurate and honest weights and measures, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. For the Lord your God detests anyone who does these things, anyone who deals dishonestly." So the measure that we use will be measured back to us. This is Jesus in Luke chapter 6. You want to see a real life example of this, watch what God does through Boaz. Now, here is something that happens long before, 3 centuries plus before Boaz shows this incredible kindness to Ruth, allowing her to take home barley from among the sheaves, basically just cutting into his own profit margin to give to her, giving her 6 shovelfuls of barley into her shawl. 300 plus years before that, we have this prescription from God, this declaration of the law, not to have 2 differing weights in your bag. You're in the marketplace, somebody comes to purchase some of your product, okay, and you have these scales that should equal out to 0. And if they want to buy 1 pound, okay, you can tell I'm an American, 1 pound of product X, and you put a pound weight on one side of the scale and then the product on the other side, and when they balance out, you can see you've just purchased 1 pound. But if you wanted to make your supplies last longer, you could trick people. You could pretend like they were actually getting a pound when they were actually getting less, because you had another weight that, even though it indicated 1 pound, they would have used 1 pound. It actually weighed less. So they're getting less than a pound's worth of product, even though it looks like you're being honest with them. God says that's going to affect your long life in the land. God detests that kind of stuff. Okay, the measure that you use will be used against you. If you're cheating people, okay, you're not going to reap the full reward that you've sown. God specifically calls out 2 differing weights in your bag, one heavy, one light. He also calls out different measures in your house, one large and one small. This would also actually be used to call out a lack of integrity among potters. If pottery came out with flaws and holes and things like that, and wax was used to fill in the holes, this would come to light when somebody took the pot home and put it on the fire. The wax would melt away, the holes would be revealed, the product, the meal, whatever, would be ruined. But one that was true, that had no holes and no wax in it, was said to have integrity, that your weights and measures are accurate. Okay, that your scales are honest, that when you deal with people, you do so honestly. And then the promise from God is that you would then live long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. That was God's promise to Old Testament Israel in the book of Deuteronomy, meaning the second law. This was a big deal to God, meaning if you violated this, if you cheated each other, you weren't going to have a long life in the land. Verse 16 of Deuteronomy 25 says, "For the Lord your God detests anyone who does these things, anyone who deals dishonestly." Wow, that gets personal quick. God detests people. Ooh, that's harsh, right? God detests anyone who does these things, anyone who deals dishonestly. If you're dealing dishonestly, God detests that. In fact, the text says in Deuteronomy 25, God detests us when we do those things. Rather, the alternative is typified through Boaz, who is giving generously. And he doesn't just give what's prescribed, he gives above and beyond. That generosity is going to come back to him. Same thing is true we see in teachings about giving in the church. We saw this in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, that as we give, God will give back to us. This is also this promise in Malachi chapter 3, that we see God open the floodgates of heaven. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. When we practice generosity, we use honest measures and we measure out like Boaz does. Man, the Lord is going to bless us. We're going to live long in the land. Evidently, it's true even in the era of the judges. Deuteronomy 25 is proven true in the example of Boaz. When we show generosity to others, when we measure out more than other people need, God will give that back to us. That same measure will be shown back to us. We can expect that reciprocity, not just because it's reasonable that other people would do so, it's not always guaranteed, but that God, the one who judges, he's the one who would cause you to lead a long life. He's the one who would see to it that the measure you use will be given back to you. The measure you use will be measured back to you. So are you being generous? Are you being honest? Are you using scales with integrity? Are you holding yourself to the same standard that you expect out of other people? If not, God detests that practice. Repent today and be like Boaz. Okay? Get the shovel and bust out the barley and give it to people. I mean, in honest measures, hugely generous portions, shaken down, all right? Pressed down, shaken together, and running over. I mean, like, give Boaz style and show huge amounts of generosity. And you can expect that that kind of measure will be measured back to you. Perhaps not in every case. There may be some people who just take full advantage of what you give, and you will not see reciprocity in that example, but you know that you're not just giving to them, you're giving because the Lord told you to. This is not just Old Testament precedent, this is not just Old Testament law like Deuteronomy 25, this is now a New Testament reality taught by Jesus in Luke chapter 6. The measure you use will be measured back to you, whether it is false or true, whether it is stingy or generous.